As you know, Hollywood, it's full of scumbags. Lots and lots of scumbags. They're everywhere. Very, very common thing. We talk a lot about ex-child stars or ex-child stars who are still acting. You talk about all of the bad things that were done to them when they were children.
I mean, look, the Olsen twins,
Yep.
Lindsay Lohan, Amanda Bynes, Jeanette McCurdy, the list just goes on and on.
There's an endless list of them, but there was this video that Mary sent me from a young woman named Arden Young, who has a tweet that says, "My New Year's resolution is to #expose Hollywood," and she posted this fantastic and very informative video describing some of the things that happened to her when she was just 13 years old.
I mean, she says this is a part 1, so she's not even done talking about her experiences yet, but this is like, for someone who didn't make it to the level of an Amanda Bynes or a Miley Cyrus, the predatory practices start there from the top to bottom in the entertainment industry, and I think that's a really important point to make. She said, like, it's not just the Harvey Weinsteins, basically.
She said, if anything, it's the middle management.
And it's not even about necessarily having bad parents. She said, like, her parents weren't stage parents that pushed her into this. Like, she wanted it, and this is what was normalized to her at the time.
So let's watch this video real quick.
I received an overwhelming amount of requests and responses for me to share more of my experience growing up in Hollywood, and so I've decided to share one of those experiences with you today. My intention in sharing this with you is to educate people on how dangerous Hollywood is and hopefully make a parent think twice before allowing their child to pursue a career in Hollywood. Let me start off by saying my parents were vigilant, good parents. They allowed me to pursue acting after years of begging. This wasn't some type of stage mom situation where they were willing to do whatever it took for me to be famous or successful. And they were definitely not willing to turn a blind eye to anyone who wanted to harm me in return for success, which unfortunately does happen. But the nature of the industry is that there are inherent power dynamics at play for aspiring actors that make them vulnerable to predators who put themselves in those power positions. And it doesn't have to be a famous producer like Harvey Weinstein. More often I found it's the low to mid-level agents, managers, acting coaches, photographers, the everyday people that actors are forced to rely upon to even begin their careers. Which brings me to the early stages of my acting career. I was 13 years old and I was in a children's acting class with around a dozen other kids in the age range of 12 to 17. It was taught by a man who was in his mid to late 30s at the time. And this class, like 99% of all children's acting classes, was closed off to parents. This acting
First red
teacher
flag.
assigned
Super red
me
flag.
and another 13-year-old girl a scene together that called for us to make out with each other on a couch. So, me and this 13-year-old girl made out on the couch in front of other kids and this acting teacher upwards of 30 times. There was even a time when another grown man who worked at the studio was brought in to watch us do the scene. And the other kids in the class were also told to do sexually inappropriate things with each other as well. We were encouraged to perform these acts because if there was something that made us uncomfortable, it was because we weren't free or uninhibited enough, which we were told were the qualities of the best actors. And this is a really common tool a predator will use. If you're not willing to do XYZ, then you don't have what it takes to be successful. But wait, it gets worse. A couple years after leaving that class, when I was 15 or 16, that same acting teacher contacted me over Facebook and solicited me for sex, asking me to come over to his apartment. And by the way, his solicitations were extremely graphic. Thankfully, I had no interest and did not agree. A disturbing thing, though, is that the culture of the industry caused me to actually find humor and amusement out of this washed-up acting coach asking a teen girl for sex, instead of being deeply disturbed and reporting it. The thought that he was a predator didn't even cross my mind because of the anything goes beliefs around sex in Hollywood, as well as the false belief that being sexually desired is what made me valuable. Sad, right? So please, parents and kids, take note of just another way Hollywood can prey on you. And I'll be posting another video on this soon.
It's kind of the same thing you were saying about Paula Abdul. She said maybe this isn't the best thing for me to do. And
the difference with Paula Abdul is like she was a grown woman and also had her own status and money in the industry by the time that these incidents happened.
But I'm saying she knew that it was not. I guess this girl, he didn't say come over for a business meeting. He propositioned her for that. That part sounded weird to me. Like the guy's just like, hello, da 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 da. Like, would you like to come over? And like that's. I guess, right?
It's going to be on the logs that Chris Hansen prints out and brings to his house.
People in the chat are saying she looks fake, like she looks CGI.
It must be the lighting.
I saw her. She did some reporting, on Pornhub and stuff. Like she does.
Yeah, she works for a network called SoundInvestigations.com, and she does undercover expose work currently on Pornhub. So. She's doing a sort of Project Veritas style reporting where she talks to executives from the company. I haven't looked into it much, but it would be interesting to ask her about it. But this just shows that even with the most well-intentioned and watchful parents, you really can't put your kid into that industry without running the huge risk of predatory adults preying on them, basically.
Parents being outlawed from the acting classes is...
That should have been the first red flag. The first red flag is that the parents weren't allowed to sit in and see what their children were being taught or what they were doing in there. When they're the ones paying for the acting classes, especially, that's insane.
Yeah.
And this guy with no overhead, no supervision, is able to do and say whatever he wants. I guess it sort of reminds me of when James Franco got in trouble for doing that acting class that was only for women. And granted, this was adults, not children, but he was teaching them how to do intimacy scenes or sex scenes. And that's allegedly when the misconduct occurred.
Yeah.
It's just like a very morally complicated line of work, and one that children just shouldn't be mixed up in, even without the risk of predatory adults around children.
Do you think she'll end up naming actual names of people?
I was just wondering that.
I don't know. I guess it really wouldn't have any effect if the people she's talking about are the low level or mid level people. They're not the Harvey Weinsteins.
I mean, it could have an effect on those people and prevent them from.
Right. Yeah.
But again, then we get into the notion
we'll have
of
to see.
Is there even any proof of this? And then you have to try to be logically consistent through all of these things. Like you have to try to hold yourself to the same standards. Just because these are people that you agree with that it's probably true doesn't mean that you shouldn't hold the same level of evidentiary importance to whether it's true. But we know that the culture around Hollywood is that. But for individual people, she's going to be worried about a lawsuit. She can't prove anything.
I plan on posting another story next week, so that would be this week. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, but keep in mind sharing this stuff is very new to me. I truly hope this helps someone out there thinking of allowing their child to pursue acting. Yeah. Hollywood is not a place for children. And I think just the work in and of itself is kind of harmful to a child's psyche, because you have to, in order to act, the function of it is that you have to separate yourself from your real identity and have multiple identities. And think about the way that Amanda Bynes did it on the Amanda Bynes shows. She's playing like 10 to 20 different characters at once in one day.
Right.
And, later on, we can see that this had a negative effect on her mental health. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't even that long ago that she was like walking around the streets of LA naked in a complete like psychotic episode, had no idea where she was and had to check herself into a mental health facility.
Yeah.
So like, the Dan Schneiders of the world and of that industry aside, the work in and of itself seems like it actually harms their mental health. But then there's obviously the additional risk that, when you put adults and kids together in an environment that's supposed to be professional, abuse happens.
Yeah. It's extremely common. I mean, you guys saw The Sound of Freedom, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The whole way that the kids get kidnapped is because they're sent to this like
It's a talent,
like a talent
agency,
So it's not
supposedly.
just in America. It's
Right.
They're
just
like, come back at
it's
5.
all over.
And they're like, come back at 5 p.m. And,
Right.
And then they're just all gone.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember they got into detail. I mean, then you could make that claim, right? Because there's kids acting in that movie, right? Kids who have to be in a scene.
And what are their stories, you know?
There are kids in that movie who had to be in scenes where, like, they have the guy and he walks in slowly and he starts to take his belt off. And you worry, like, you're like, how much did that kid retain from that? But they, I remember that they said that they went through great lengths to make sure that those kids understood that what you're experiencing is what this is not real. And it never went, like, the scene isn't cut anywhere. Like, it didn't get cut down. Like, that's the extent of it. It wasn't filmed further. That's the extent of the scene. So there's an ethical argument there. Like, is the message that they're sending important enough to put kids at risk by making a movie like that? And then you get into the art of it all and wondering whether there's a certain level of efficacy to the idea that, you know, if they're sending a good message, then it's okay. But if they're sending a bad message, then it's not. What do the kids retain from that?
I believe they said that for the kid who played the younger brother, at least, like, he was like 4 or 5 years old, right? They didn't tell him what the scenes were about. He just was told, you know, you cry at this line, you express this emotion here, and you know, what happens. But they weren't going to tell him in detail what this was about, because that would be traumatic in and of itself.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I remember, okay, so there was an episode of Criminal Minds where Hotchner's, like, he's been basically being stalked by this serial killer for like 2 seasons. And the dude gets, like, his wife and son have to go into witness protection. And, like, the guy finds them, and he's like on the phone with his wife, and the guy's sitting there talking to his wife, and the wife knows she's going to die. And she has to put a brave face on for her son, who's so young, he has no idea what's going on. And so the son is watching the mom basically look terrified while trying to hold it together, while this dude is sitting there and sends the kid away. Like, how much does a young person retain from something like that, where it's very clearly not a good situation?
yeah,
Kids have to act in scenes like that.
Yeah.
a lot of actors who are adults now that started as kids speak, you know, in an admiring tone about the way their parents made sacrifices to allow them to be in the entertainment industry. Like, I remember Sydney Sweeney was one of them. She said that, you know, they grew up very middle class, and that her parents quit their jobs and moved across the country to allow her to work in LA. And look, it all turned out to be worth it because I got to, you know, do pretend gangbangs on Euphoria. Mm. Is it really worth that trade-off, though? Like, is it worth the trade-off of your dignity?
Yeah.
Right. And she's still in her prime. Usually things like that don't catch up to you until later.
Well, we talked our
lose
video
your success.
Yeah, we talked about Jennifer Love Hewitt. That video actually did really, really well about her. Like, I was sexualized when I was 17 or 18, and like most of the comments were like, well, then return the money. If you really have a problem with it on moral grounds, then return the money, and or accept that some choices were made when you were younger. That, like, it's not all of it's like when she's like, she was on Maxim and stuff when she was 18 or 19 and stuff like that. You were an adult.
What's Maxim?
It was like a men's magazine, like FHM back. Wow, I feel old now.
Was it like Playboy or not really?
No. It's like you still had clothes on, but it was, you know, it was.
Like Maxim's Hot 100.
Yes.
Okay.
Like, right. So like
that.
all of the women of that time period, that was a very big thing, and it wasn't.
Well, it's normalized to them long before they turn 18, which is really the core issue.
Yeah.
Like, that's the culture that this girl Arden Young was talking about. Is everything, all of this libertinism is normalized to you from the time that you're a child in the industry. It's that anything goes attitude about sexuality that you're told is necessary to get success.
And it's an extremely like manipulative use of actual advice that they give adult actors, right? Which is like, look, if you're going to actually embody this character, there does have to be a certain amount of, you have to be a certain level of free. You have to disassociate from yourself, and you can't let your ego get into it, or you won't be able to embody that character. There will always be reservation in your performance, which is good advice for adults.
Right.
For children, in the context of a sexual situation, it's taking good advice for adults and using it as a way to manipulate kids.
Right. The adults are capable of doing that because theoretically, by the time you're an adult, you're a fully formed human being, and you are able to psychologically, dissociate into another character without it fragmenting your real identity. But a child is just inherently not capable of doing that because they're not fully formed yet.
Yeah.
And I would just say that's inherently wrong, it's at least inherently going to be morally complicated when you start doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would never let my child act. Or we have to just accept that child actors may suck. I feel like that's gonna the two choices.
Yeah.
And the kids who want that see other child stars on TV and like think I want to do that, they don't understand the implications of it. Like I uncovered over Christmas the old files from when I went to a talent search and like the card of like the agent and everything, and I was like, wow, thank God that I, even though I didn't have the discernment at the time to know what, the dangerous things that could have happened to me, that my parents understood and shielded me from it.
Yeah. I mean, I think I went to one of those when I was like 13. And then my parents just never followed up with it. And I'm like, thank God.
I'm sure that happens a lot.
For real.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.